After 6 years of marriage, my wife laughed while asking for a divorce. Now, I'm the one ignoring her. Yesterday, me and my wife were just chilling and watching TV. My wife all of a sudden said that she wants a divorce and started laughing hysterically. She was quite drunk. She drinks, I do not. I was shocked when she suddenly asked me for divorce. I have been with her for past 6 years. All this time we spent together, but she never ever asked me something so absurd. I got angry and said, "Sure, doors that way. Send me papers, but make it fair." She stopped laughing and got sad. I am used to her sarcastic questions about it. I would do something like this or that for her, or absurdity, like if I would jump off the hill for her, etc., but I never saw this coming my way. But she this time got sad and angry and became serious and asked me, "Am I for real?" I said, "Sure I am. You want to leave me, then leave. I can't stop you, or do you want me to physically stop you?" She got very angry and started crying and said that I wouldn't even fight even a little to save our marriage and just agree to divorce without reacting. She asked me, have I stopped loving her? I told her I love her, but if you want to leave me, I won't stop you or beg you. My wife got very angry and slapped my chest and said, "Bad husband." I tried to stop her and ask her to talk to me, but she didn't listen to me. She's been ignoring me since yesterday. Today I went to talk to her, and she said that I need to become a better man and husband and fight for my wife instead of just agreeing to divorce like a heartless pig, and until I work on myself, she will not talk to me. And she's been ignoring me. She gave me food, sat next to me, but whenever I tried to talk to her, she didn't reply. I was thinking of apologizing, but I also thought that I don't need to apologize because I didn't do anything wrong, Ada. Update 1. It's been 4 days since that strange night, and things between my wife and me have been, well, different. It's like a shift in the air, and I can't tell if I'm imagining it or if it's actually happening. I mean, we still talk, kind of. She still cooks meals, we still sit together on the couch, and she even made my morning coffee like always. But something is off. The energy in the room feels strained, like an unspoken tension constantly lurking just below the surface. After she said she wanted a divorce, I didn't take it seriously at first. I mean, she was drunk, right? She has a history of saying ridiculous things when she's had a bit too much, like the time she asked me if I would swim across the ocean for her, or how she joked about living off the grid in a treehouse. It's just who she is, full of absurd hypotheticals that never mean anything. But this felt different. When she started laughing, it wasn't her usual playful, tipsy laugh. It was more like a nervous, shaky laugh, as if she wasn't sure how I would react, or maybe she wasn't even sure how she felt about it herself. At first I was angry. I think anyone would be. 6 years together, and she just dropped something like that on me out of the blue? But then, when she stopped laughing and got sad, I realized maybe this wasn't just a drunken joke. Maybe she's been thinking about this for a while. Maybe she just didn't know how to say it until the alcohol gave her the courage. Or maybe the lack of filter. I didn't mean to brush her off when I told her to send the papers if she was serious. Honestly, I was just reacting. It was one of those moments where you say something because you don't know what else to say. But when I saw how hurt she looked, I started to question if maybe I handled it wrong. Should I have fought for her in that moment? Should I have asked her why she wanted a divorce, tried to get to the root of it instead of throwing her words back in her face? That night, after she went to bed, I stayed up for hours replaying the conversation in my head. It didn't make sense. We don't fight, not really. We have the usual couple arguments about stupid stuff, like which show to watch or who forgot to take the trash out. But there's no major issue, nothing that would make me think she was unhappy enough to leave. So why would she ask for a divorce? Is there something I've been missing all along? Or was it really just the alcohol talking? The next morning, I tried to talk to her about it, but she wasn't having any of it. She acted like nothing happened. She made breakfast, poured my coffee, and went about her day like everything was normal. I brought up the conversation, and she just brushed it off, saying she didn't remember half of what she said. But I could tell that wasn't entirely true. Her eyes gave her away. There was something behind them, something she wasn't saying. When I pressed her a little more, asking if she really wanted a divorce, or if it was just a drunken rant, she got defensive. She said something about me not being able to take a joke, but her tone was sharper than usual. It didn't feel like she was joking at all. That's when I started to realize this might be bigger than I thought. Her sarcastic comments about me not fighting for our marriage stuck with me. She said I was a bad husband for just agreeing to divorce without putting up a fight. But what was I supposed to do? I can't force her to stay with me if she doesn't want to. I tried to explain that to her, but she just got more upset. She cried, slapped my chest, and then stormed off, leaving me sitting there, feeling like the world's biggest jerk. I hate to admit it, but I started questioning everything after that. What if she's been unhappy for a long time and I just never noticed? What if she's been dropping hints and I've been too oblivious to pick up on them? I always thought we had a solid relationship, but now I'm second-guessing every little thing. Was I too passive? Did I miss something major along the way? For the past few days, she's been giving me the silent treatment. She still talks to me when necessary, like when we need to coordinate plans or she asks if I want something to eat. But it's cold, detached. She'll sit next to me on the couch, but it feels like there's a wall between us. I've tried to apologize, but every time I bring up that night, she either changes the subject or acts like it's not a big deal. It's frustrating as hell. I don't know what I'm supposed to do or say to make this right. This morning, I tried again. I told her we needed to talk, really talk, about what happened and where we go from here. At first, she ignored me, continuing to scroll through her phone like I wasn't even in the room. But when I didn't drop it, she finally looked up and said, "You just don't get it, do you?" "What don't I get?" I asked, genuinely confused. She shook her head like I was the dumbest person on the planet and said, "You never fight for anything. Not for me, not for us. You just exist." That stung. I didn't know what to say to that because, in some ways, she wasn't wrong. I've never been the type to make a big deal out of things. I'm not one for drama or conflict. I've always figured if someone wants to be with me, they will, and if they don't, I'm not going to beg them to stay. But hearing her say it like that made me wonder if maybe my laid-back attitude has been hurting us all along. I tried to explain that to her, that I thought I was doing the right thing by not making a fuss, by letting her have her space, but she cut me off. "Sometimes I don't want space," she said. "Sometimes I want to know you actually give a damn, that you care enough to fight for me instead of just agreeing to whatever I say." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I never realized she felt that way. I thought I was being respectful, giving her room to be herself, to make her own decisions. But now, I'm starting to see that maybe I've been too distant, too passive. Maybe she's been waiting for me to step up and show her that I'm willing to fight for us, and I've been too blind to see it. We sat in silence for what felt like an eternity after that. I didn't know what to say. How do you fix something like this? How do you change years of behavior overnight? Eventually, she got up and walked out of the room, leaving me alone with my thoughts. I don't know where we go from here. I don't know if this is something we can fix or if it's too late. But I do know one thing. I'm not ready to give up on us yet. If she wants me to fight for her, then that's what I'm going to do. Update 2. The next few days after our conversation were a mess of confusion, silence, and awkward attempts at communication. My wife and I moved through the house like strangers, barely acknowledging each other unless we had to. I was trying to figure out how to fix things, how to show her that I cared. But it felt like every time I tried to talk to her, she would shut me down before I could get anywhere. It was frustrating, but more than that, it was heartbreaking. I felt like I was losing her, and the worst part was that I didn't even know why. She kept going on about how I never fought for her, never showed her that I cared enough to put in the effort. But what did that even mean? I thought I had been doing that all along, just in my own way. I worked hard. I provided for us. I made sure we had a comfortable life. I wasn't a big talker, but I was always there for her when she needed me. I never thought that wasn't enough. That morning, I decided I couldn't take the silence anymore. I had to do something. So I tried again. I sat her down, this time more determined to really get through to her. I asked her what she wanted from me, what I could do to fix things. At first, she didn't say much, just stared at me with those sad eyes that seemed to be holding back so much more than she was letting on. Finally, after what felt like forever, she spoke. "I don't want to be the one always pushing for things," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "I don't want to be the one always trying to make us work. I need to know that you want this as much as I do, that you're willing to fight for us. Because right now, it feels like you're just here, like you're going through the motions." Her words hit me harder than I expected. I thought back to our arguments, to the times I'd stayed quiet or brushed things off, thinking I was avoiding a fight. But now I was starting to see that maybe my silence had been hurting her more than I realized. Maybe I'd been too focused on avoiding conflict that I'd missed what she really needed. I told her I was sorry. I told her I didn't know she felt that way, that I thought I was doing the right thing by not making a big deal out of things. But she shook her head, like that wasn't what she wanted to hear. "I don't want an apology," she said. "I want you to show me that you care. I want you to show me that you're willing to put in the effort to make this work. I want you to fight for us, not just give up when things get tough." I asked her how. I asked her what that would look like because I genuinely didn't know. I'd always thought that by being there for her, by not starting fights, I was showing her I cared, but clearly that wasn't enough. She hesitated, and for a moment I thought she wasn't going to answer. But then she looked at me, her eyes filled with a mix of frustration and sadness. "I need you to be present," she said. I need you to stop avoiding things, to stop shutting down when we argue. I need you to show me that you're willing to fight for me, for us, even when it's hard. Because right now, it feels like you're just waiting for me to make all the decisions, and I can't do it alone anymore." It was like a punch to the gut. I never realized she felt that way. I thought I was doing the right thing by staying calm, by not making a big deal out of things. But now I was starting to see that maybe my way of handling things wasn't helping. Maybe it was hurting her, and I hadn't even noticed. That night, I lay in bed thinking about everything she said. I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying our conversation in my head, trying to figure out where I went wrong, how I missed all the signs. It felt like my whole world was unraveling, and I didn't know how to stop it. The next morning, I decided to take action. I called out of work and made plans to do something I'd never really done before, something spontaneous. I figured maybe I needed to show her that I was willing to put in the effort, that I cared enough to step out of my comfort zone. I booked us a weekend getaway. Nothing fancy, just a cabin out in the woods where we could unplug, get away from everything, and really talk. I knew it wasn't going to fix everything, but I hoped it would show her that I was trying, that I was willing to fight for us like she wanted. When I told her about the trip, she seemed surprised. She didn't say much at first, just stared at me like she was trying to figure out if I was serious. "You're taking time off work for this?" she asked, her voice filled with disbelief. "Yeah," I said, nodding. "I thought we could use some time away, just the two of us. I want to fix this. I want to fight for us, like you said." She didn't say anything for a while, just looked at me with a mix of surprise and something else I couldn't quite place. Eventually, she nodded, but I could tell she wasn't convinced yet. I couldn't blame her. I hadn't exactly been the most proactive partner lately, and I knew I had a lot of work to do if I wanted to earn her trust back. The weekend came, and we drove up to the cabin. It was quiet, surrounded by trees and nature. No cell service, no distractions. Just the two of us, alone with our thoughts and all the things we hadn't said to each other in a long time. At first, it was awkward. We sat in silence for most of the first day, neither of us knowing what to say or how to start the conversation. But eventually, after a couple of drinks and a long walk in the woods, we started to open up. We talked about everything, the past, the future, all the little things that had been building up over the years. She told me how she'd been feeling for a long time, how she felt like I wasn't really there in our relationship, even when I was physically present. She said she'd been feeling lonely, even though we lived under the same roof, and that she didn't know how to tell me without starting a fight. I told her I had no idea she felt that way. I told her I thought I was doing the right thing by giving her space, by not pushing when she seemed distant. But now I could see that maybe I'd been too distant, that maybe I'd been avoiding things because I didn't want to deal with the hard conversations. It was a long weekend of tears, apologies, and difficult conversations, but by the end of it, I felt like we'd made progress. It wasn't perfect, we still had a lot to work on, but at least we were talking again. At least we were on the same page. When we got back home, things felt different. The tension between us wasn't completely gone, but it wasn't as heavy as it had been before. We were trying, both of us, and that was a start. But then, a few days later, something happened that I never saw coming. I was cleaning up the living room when I found her phone lying on the couch. It had been buzzing all afternoon with notifications, but she wasn't around to check it. I didn't think much of it at first, until I glanced at the screen and saw the name that popped up. It was a guy's name, a name I didn't recognize. Curiosity got the best of me, and I picked up the phone, scrolling through the messages. My heart dropped as I read the conversation. They weren't flirtatious, at least not at first. But the more I read, the more I realized that this wasn't just a casual friendship. There was something more there, something she hadn't told me about. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. All this time, I thought our issues were just between us, that we could fix things if we worked on them together. But now, I was starting to wonder if there was more to the story, if maybe there was someone else involved. When she got home that night, I didn't say anything at first. I didn't know how to bring it up without starting a fight. But I knew I couldn't keep quiet about it forever. I asked her who he was, trying to keep my voice calm, but she could tell something was off. She froze for a second, then shrugged like it was no big deal. "He's just a friend," she said. But the way she said it didn't sit right with me. There was something in her tone, something that made me think she wasn't telling me the whole truth. I didn't push it, yet, but now I couldn't shake the feeling that maybe our problems ran deeper than I thought, and I wasn't sure if I was ready for what I might find out next. Update 3. The next few days after finding that message were like walking on broken glass. My wife and I had finally started working on things, but now there was this nagging suspicion hanging over me. I tried not to let it show. I wanted to believe that the guy she was texting was just a friend, that I was overthinking things because of all the stress we had been through lately. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. I found myself watching her more closely, paying attention to the little things, the way she would glance at her phone when she thought I wasn't looking, how she'd slip away into another room when she took a call, the way her smile seemed to fade when she caught me staring. It felt like everything was a sign, even when it probably wasn't. I hated feeling this way, like I was turning into someone I didn't want to be, someone suspicious, someone paranoid, but the fear that something was going on behind my back wouldn't leave me alone. One evening, I couldn't take it anymore. I had to know. I asked her again about the guy, and this time I didn't let her brush it off. I told her I saw the messages, that I noticed how much they had been texting, and that it didn't sit right with me. I told her I needed the truth, no more half answers or dodging the question. Her reaction wasn't what I expected. Instead of getting defensive or angry, she went quiet. Too quiet. She looked down at her hands, playing with her wedding ring like she was trying to figure out what to say. My heart was pounding in my chest. I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, waiting to either fall or be pulled back to safety. After what felt like an eternity, she finally spoke. "He's an old friend," she said softly. "From before we were together." I didn't know what to say. I just waited, hoping she would continue, hoping there was more to the story that would explain everything. But the look on her face told me there was no easy explanation coming. "We reconnected a few months ago," she continued. "It wasn't supposed to be a big deal, but things got complicated. We started talking more, and I didn't mean for it to happen, but I think I caught feelings again." My world stopped. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She was telling me that she had feelings for another man, a man she had been texting behind my back while we were struggling to save our marriage. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. All I could do was stare at her, trying to process what she had just said. "I didn't cheat," she said quickly, as if that would somehow make everything better. "We never did anything physical. But emotionally, I don't know. I'm confused." Confused. That word echoed in my head like a broken record. She was confused. About us, about our marriage, about me. And here I was, trying to fight for us, trying to fix things, while she was off catching feelings for someone else. I felt like an idiot. I stood up, needing to get out of the room before I said something I would regret. I didn't even know where I was going, but I couldn't stay there. My emotions were all over the place. Anger, hurt, betrayal. I felt like my heart had been ripped out of my chest. How could she do this? How could she reconnect with someone, start developing feelings, and not tell me? I ended up in the kitchen, leaning against the counter, trying to steady my breathing. She followed me a few minutes later, but neither of us spoke. The silence between us was deafening. Finally, I broke the silence. "Why didn't you tell me?" She didn't answer right away. When she finally did, her voice was shaky, almost a whisper. "I didn't want to hurt you," she said. "I thought if I could just figure things out on my own, if I could just make sense of my feelings, then I wouldn't have to tell you. I thought it would pass, that I could just get over it. But it didn't. And now what?" I asked, my voice harsher than I intended. "Now we're here. Now you're telling me that while I've been trying to fix our marriage, you've been catching feelings for someone else. What am I supposed to do with that?" She didn't have an answer. She just stood there, tears welling up in her eyes. I hated seeing her like that, but I couldn't let go of the anger that was building inside me. This wasn't fair. I didn't deserve this. We were supposed to be working on us, not adding more problems to the mix. "I don't know," she whispered. "I don't know what to do. I love you, but But you what?" I snapped, my patience finally wearing thin. She shook her head, tears now streaming down her face. "I don't know. I'm so confused." That word again, confused. It was like a knife to my heart every time she said it. I didn't know what to say, what to do. I just felt numb. Part of me wanted to scream, to tell her that if she was confused, then maybe we shouldn't be together. Maybe it was time to call it quits and stop pretending like we could fix this. But another part of me, the part that still loved her, wanted to hold on, to fight for what we had built over the past 6 years. "I need space," I finally said, my voice quiet but firm. "I need time to think." She nodded, wiping away her tears. "I understand." We didn't talk much after that. I spent the next few days avoiding her, staying out of the house as much as possible. I didn't know how to process everything. I didn't know if we could come back from this, or if we even should. Then, one night, everything changed. I came home late, thinking she would already be asleep, but instead, I found her sitting at the kitchen table, a bottle of wine open in front of her. She looked up when I walked in, her eyes red from crying. I can't do this anymore, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. What do you mean? I can't keep pretending like everything is okay, she continued. I love you, but I'm not in love with you anymore. I've been lying to myself, trying to make this work, but I can't do it. I'm sorry. Her words hit me like a ton of bricks. I had been so focused on fixing our marriage, on fighting for us, that I didn't see what was really happening. She had already checked out. She had already made up her mind, and I was the last to know. What are you saying? I asked, my voice barely audible. She looked down at the table, her fingers tracing the rim of her wine glass. I think it's time for us to separate. I think it's time for me to move on. I didn't know what to say. I felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. I had spent so much time trying to save our marriage, only to find out that it was already over. I'm sorry, she said again, her voice breaking. I never wanted to hurt you, but I can't keep living a lie. I nodded, my mind racing, trying to process everything. I wanted to be angry, but all I felt was sadness, deep, overwhelming sadness. The next morning, she started packing her things. It was surreal, watching her move around the house, taking down pictures, packing away clothes. I felt like I was in a dream, like none of this was really happening. But it was, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. By the end of the week, she was gone. Just like that, 6 years of marriage were over. We didn't have some big blowout fight, no screaming or yelling, just a quiet, heartbreaking end to what had once been a happy life together. I don't know what the future holds. I don't know if I'll ever understand how things went so wrong. All I know is that I fought for us, and in the end, it wasn't enough. Maybe it never was. And now I'm left picking up the pieces, alone.